Hello, welcome. This is my session for In My Skin, written by Elska. Just quickly at the top, we have the reference track, which is Settle by Vera Blue. Underneath that, we have MIDI blocking for Settle itself, just to help me reimagine the song through verse, chorus, bridge, etc., etc. For the track itself, I've broken the groups down into three separate groups. That is acoustic, and inside this group is everything that was recorded in the studio by Elska. Atom, which is an alias I go by, and that's everything I added to it, my own little touch, and then the vocals down the bottom, which we will go through. So first of all, we'll go to this little harp loop that I heard through the recording and essentially based my entire reimagined version on this loop. So all I've done for this is just a high pass filter, negative 48 dB, around 200 hertz, a little bit above, just to get rid of unwanted noise floor and humming that was in this low end. And then dipped a couple of key frequencies out just to better fit it in the mix. I dare say to better suit either the chords that are down here or one of the things that I've added around here. And then this gate, I've put it here just to assist with the noise floor issue. Get out as much of it as I can. Put a fast attack, slow release to try and emulate a natural sounding release of a harp being plucked instead of it just cutting out straight away. And for this compressor, not too serious of compression. I've just done it to dip out that little note here. You see it's just above it, this note. Just to kind of bring it closer together. Fairly straightforward. For moving on, we have the chord structure, which is G, D, C for the entirety of the track. For the EQing on this, there was something. It must have been the microphone we used or something we were patching incorrectly, because a lot of the recordings had a very square sound to some sections of it. And I don't know if that's just resonance from the harp itself due to it having 8 contact mics inside the chamber of the harp, which definitely had a lot of resonance as is. Like we'll hear it without. That's got the reverb on it too, so it does sound a little sweeter even when it's un-EQ'd, but just dropped out those frequencies because I didn't like them. They didn't really fit too well, especially when I added some things later on, like a keyboard and a couple other things. So I just got rid of those. Just an aesthetic choice, really. This multi-band dynamics, just a multi-range compressor, really. You got high, mid, and low. And again, just drop down, just reduce the mid-range a little bit more, just to help with getting rid of that boxiness, because it's very mid-range heavy, and then some standard compression just to help balance out the levels. Moving on, we have a percussive sequence performed by Elska on her harp. So you can hear the. Sorry, we'll get the visual. You can hear all that resonance and low end from those contact mics, because the harp was DI'd straight into the loop pedal, which then ran into the desk. The mics we used for a lot of the harp recordings were contact mics inside the body. We did have three. We did mic the harp up with 3 separate mics, but these recordings really had a lot of character to them, so I decided to go with these. But yeah, a lot of noisy frequencies going on and whatnot. I could have gated this as well, because as you can hear, there's a harp in the background. But being that this is a scratch track, I didn't bother too much with it because we can go back over, maybe just use a wooden board or a wooden box to re-record the percussion. And this is simple shaker in the EQ, just finding the right frequency. Put the gate there again to help with noise floor of all the recording session, and then made it fairly quiet on the compressor. Well, a lot more quiet than what the original source was. The thing that makes this shaker stand out more is the high end of the tail on the frequency, on the reverb. Sorry, on the frequency. And I did that with this reverb here, and you can see that the input that I've put on this send has a lot of upper frequencies and not too much diffusion on the top end as well, because I want it to ring out. It's got a fairly long decay time, especially for something that is so frequent. It really fills in gaps. It's got a fairly high density with all the pre-delays on these sends are the same. Well, both the pre-delays. The only difference is the input and the decay time, essentially. Just to make sure that atmospheric space is still familiar, but I have multiple options and distances to use without having to automate the send itself. I like that. So yeah, I use these two reverbs a lot in this mix. I could have kept a lot of this high end in on the raw recording, but I just think having those upper harmonics further away in the distance really gave it that summery vibe within the mix. Up here we have a little pluck that I put in. Just found a sweet spot in the EQ. I did a little bit of mixing on the sound itself inside of the program. So yeah, I've just boosted the 5K, the 10K, and the 15, even though it's not very audible, and got rid of some mid range. Just yeah, a couple of other little dynamic processing things. Down here we have the keyboard, which again I just use the structure of the chords that she's already playing and just follow G, D, C the whole way down. Fairly straightforward and not too much EQing. Just got rid of the 200 hertz mark because it gets a little busy in this mix, and I find with a lot of mixes that'll be the case. So yeah, just got rid of that. No, not much stress on it. This sidechain here, I have a very subtle sidechain compression on this, so it's not so much as audible in the mix, but it does give a very underlying pulse to it. So I just thought it was a nice little touch. There is still a little bit of a click in there, so I can raise the attack or even lower the rate a little bit. But we can look further into those things when it gets to the proper recording stage. This is a kick that I added. Fairly simple, fairly straightforward. Just a sample that I found, just a vinyl sample, which when we go back in, we'll re-record it. Put a fade out, let it make it as smooth as possible. Not too much low end due to the sub here that'll carry most of the low end. No high end. There was a very high. There's a lot of noise in this kick. And initially, this is what it looked like. So I just got rid of all that. Made it sound a little bit tighter within the mix. For the delay, I've done this delay here to emulate it sounding like it was recorded in the same room as the harp to make one piece, because it just stood out so much when I first put it in. It just sounded way too out of place. So I did this: left speaker 20 milliseconds, right speaker 40 milliseconds, and it makes a pretty pretty subtle delay. You just gotta. I'll just work with the feedback and the wetness of it. For example, very subtle, but it just makes it fit quite nicely. Glue compressor, just to kind of hold it all together, hold that delay and stuff, and then some standard compression on these claps here. Just recorded me tapping two shakers together on my iPhone, uploaded it, sliced it up, changed the sensitivity, and then can play it like notes. Can play it. Whoop, that's not good. Yeah, so that was a bit of fun. Um, Mixed them well together, I think. But when the actual recording comes around, I'll reference the actual recording a lot because this is a scratch track. Probably get some, some more some more real sounding clicks, as these are just two shakers being slapped together. Just finding frequencies that I like or frequencies that don't need to be there and notching them out. For the vocals, moving on, we have the main vocal line, which is probably the heaviest, which probably has the most range in it and is the loudest, being the main vocal line, least processed.
I feel like staying.
For the reverb tails, we have just to kind of in the sections where there are lots of layers of vocals together, didn't do too much movement of the actual vocal itself. Due to it being the main vocal, I wanted it to stand out when it's also being layered by multiple different things. But then when it drops out, give it that space, let it ride out a little bit more.
I'm wanting you now. I'm wanting you here inside my heart.
That was nice. On here, we'll just do one of the vocal sections because they're all processed fairly similarly. So here we have a bunch of layers of recordings that Elska's done, even though they're harmonic recordings, meaning that she's purposely singing in a different note to better fit. Still process them a little bit differently, just so the frequency response of them, not too much difference, but just so the frequency response kind of gives that feel of blending and you're not overcrowding sections. It's really not too much difference in what is here, but together. And Elska, when I sent Elska this track, she decided it was her decision that she didn't like the vocals. They might have sounded out of time or not in key, or I'm not sure what her final choice was, her reasoning was for her decision, but we decided to scrap these vocals completely and just work with the instrumental, move forward, build that, and then once this is done, we'll re-record. And so yeah, we can quickly just jot through some of these. So again, they're just a lot of parallel EQing, just for like slight differences. Again, to make things balance a little bit more, spatial dynamics and reverbs and panning and whatnot. But yeah, that is my mix for In My Skin.